I think the first thing is, obviously I'm sort of stepping in to look at talking about culture changes in residential care and also home care as well. But I think the first thing to remember is that we've all gone a long way from if you were here 10 years ago and you look at where you are now, all of our standards have improved. We've had all the cost cuttings and we're trying to retain the best staff and get the best staff into employment, and it's very, very difficult. So we've had to develop sort of innovative ways of working. Like I say, I'm from the Laurels, and we are twofold really. We've been a residential care home for about 40 years. It's been a family business that I took over. So I've been the manager for about 13 of those years. But we also started with domiciliary care about 6 years ago, and we're a B-list provider, but we subcontract to Oakley. And that is a challenge in itself, because although there's lots of similarities, they are so different. So in a lot of respects, it's quite difficult to sort of generalise and apply things to both equally. The culture seed. We, like I say, in the residential care home, took a step back about 13 years ago as a business perspective and thought, how can we improve things to be absolutely honest, to improve our occupancy? Because at the end of the day, we're there for a business. We've got to have a viable business to keep people employed in jobs and obviously keep ourselves employed as well. So we took a step back and we thought, what should we be doing? And it became evident that when people came to view the Laurels, they were saying, what activities do you do? What outings do you do? Things like that. And we thought, oh God, we really should make a better effort and do this. So we started implementing an activities agenda. And we were very forceful with it because it has to be a top-down approach, but you've got to get everybody else in the organisation wanting to embrace that. I'm a bit embarrassed really that it was a business drive and it wasn't a person-centred drive, but that was the reality of what it was 13 years ago. We started doing activities, and the way that the Laurels was at that time is we had a lot of people, and we're getting more people with later stages and end stages of dementia, which I'm sure everybody is experiencing that, not just in residential care, but in home care. Because when I started home care and I went out on a weekend or whenever I wasn't sort of in the care home, I was really surprised with how much people were supported with late stages of dementia. I actually thought that everybody with late stages of dementia was in the care home. I didn't think that there was the facilities to support people as well as what there is in the community. So we started this activities agenda, and we quite quickly realised that you can't leave people to do it on their own, staff to do it on their own. It has to be structured or else it wouldn't get done. The residents, we had quite a bit of, at that time, periods of aminosity where didn't seem to have a happy flow to the home at that given time. We noticed that we had a lot of people, you'd say at a dinner table, they would shred the serviettes up, they would put milk in the sugar bowls, that type of thing. So we implemented the activities agenda. Very, very quickly we noticed a huge change in the way that people were sort of happier in themselves, the sort of a sense of well-being. We noticed that the clients, there was a few clients that would start tipping things into sugar bowls. That stopped. There was a lot more focus. The people at the time that seemed to be walking aimlessly back and forward, they stopped. They were more structured. They were sitting down. It's just the whole atmosphere changed. It was just absolutely unbelievable. So what we started by doing for something as a business thing, very quickly we realised that, hang on a minute, this seems to be helping people. They're actually not as advanced as what we thought they were. It's because our interaction and our engagement and our communication skills just aren't up to scratch and the things that we're doing. So I can always remember going to Wales for 4 days and everything was just lovely when I left. Everybody was getting activities. we focused on the people. What we did find is that the residents who are quite chatty and can engage and things like that, the staff would go to them. And the people that really needed that interaction weren't getting it. So the people that were, walking back and forward, they were getting no stimulation because they weren't involved in this little group, the group activities we were doing. So we started pinpointing one-to-ones, and we developed a programme based on the person's individual needs, the likes, what we knew about them, all the sort of best practice principles that we all know about. And we started doing one-to-ones with these people, so structured activity as well as other things as well. When I went to Cardiff 4 days, I came back, and lo and behold, sugar, tea, sugar and milk getting mixed together, people walking all over the place, and it just hit home. We think we've got it, and we haven't got it right, because as soon as the manager goes off, it doesn't get done. And that has been the absolute biggest battle. I can always remember when we started doing activities, to the horror, I've got to say horror of the staff. We had one member of staff said, if I wanted to do Heidi High, I'd have got a job in Butlins. So obviously she didn't stay with us very long. And we had a lot of people not wanting to be on board as well. One of the difficult things is when, we actually thought it's the funding as well. We're not getting the funding that we were hoping for. We can't do all these activities. It costs a lot of money. So we looked at sort of different ways that we can fundraise. So what we do is we make arts and crafts. So we've got an art and craft group that just makes things. And then we have theme afternoons where, I don't know, maybe a 1920s afternoon, or it could have been the Halloween or something like that. And we sell the things that we make. And the last one we had, we actually made £220. So it isn't really costing us anything. And the things that we're going to talk about are, the things that you do normally in your everyday life. Has anybody done David Sheard's course? Yeah. We did his course probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and we did implement about a lot of what he suggested. Not everything, but quite a lot. So a lot of this will be quite familiar to people, but it's the culture of trying to maintain them changes. It's a fighting battle all the time. You think you get in there, and then it just takes a step back. So like we say, we introduced the meaningful activities, which I'll go on to a bit more later on. Yeah, service users mentors. These are really prompts for me, and it probably isn't the right place to put that in. What we did was we set up as a City and Guilds Assessment Centre in 2000. So we put our own staff through the NVQs, or the diplomas as it is now. And one of the things that we did, and it actually worked really, really well in home care, it actually works better in home care than it does in the care home, is we asked the service users to be mentors for what we call the learners, or the apprentices now. So in home care, we obviously have got to gain consent for the assessors to go into clients' houses and observe the staff in practice. So they were involved in the feedback about how the learning went, but also they wrote sort of witness testimonies for the learners, and then that got used in their e-portfolios towards the diplomas. But also, we always look at ways that we can kind of use everything to our own benefit as well. Not just the learner's benefit, but obviously we've got to demonstrate that we're maintaining standards and things like that. So we also, when the assessor goes out and undertakes the observations, that assessment is used in their personal files as evidence that they maintain in practice as well. And also the witness testimonies that the service users write, they're used in their personal files to give examples that they maintain in the standards and best practice that they should do. Environmental redesign. I'm sure a lot of the care homes here are looking at redesigning for people with sort of visual impairments, dementia, that type of thing. Well, we went up to Stirling a couple of years ago now, and we did a 4-day course on redesigning of care homes for dementia standards. And then I can remember we came back on, we finished on the Thursday, went back to work on the Friday, and we had electricians, plumbers, everybody in to give us estimates. And we've put in a rolling programme of redesigning using Stirling's principles. But also what we did was we had an attic, but it's a big old care home, and the attic isn't like our attics. It's like a third floor that couldn't be used, and it was just storage. So we started off by gutting that and renovating it, making it into training rooms, and we kind of used the principles of Stirling, that when people come to do the training, they're actually in an environment that's conducive to supporting people with dementia, so they can pick up about the environmental designs, little things. Nobody's going to be able to, well, I'm saying nobody, not unless you've got a lot of money. If you're supporting somebody in their own home, they haven't got necessarily a huge amount of money to spend in redesigning using Stirling's principles. But if they are going to be changing the carpets, then it's about, looking at advising about the plain carpets. It could just be you can get these flood things for the sinks. They're maybe £10. That could save somebody a lot of money. About taking mirrors off the walls, that type of thing, so that the staff are trained and they can support people in home care, but also in the care home as well. So we use quite a bit of assistive technology now. So we have bed sensors because, obviously we are supporting people with later stages of dementia. And the old system that we had, which was wired into the wall, most of our residents wouldn't be able to put the hand out and press a bell for assistance. So what we can do is for those people that need it, we can put a sensor on the bed. So when they get out of bed, it alerts the staff through the alarm system that they may need support. So little things like that, that's made a difference. No uniforms, again, this actually came from David Sheard, and that was a battle. we made a no uniform policy, and staff just dug their heels in. They just continued to wear the uniforms. We had gone out of like the nursery uniforms and gone into sweatshirts and things, but they were still wearing them. So I thought, right, I'm not going to be beaten here. Can I have all your uniforms back? And I got people signing all the uniforms back, and I thought, right, I've beat it now. And then staff went out and bought their own and come back in. So eventually, some staff didn't like the changes that did that and ended up just leaving anyhow. But what a difference having no uniforms make. We've got a mixture of staff. We've got old staff, we've got younger staff, and the younger staff come in with all the fashionable clothes on, and it just generates lots of discussion, lots of sort of swapping things like this, and I can't say enough about no uniforms. Interviews. We haven't done this in home care, but in the care home, we do invite service users to participate in interviews. Not all the time. Sometimes they'll say yes, and then the last minute they'll say no. But we have done, and it's quite interesting because the things that's important to them, I wouldn't necessarily think of myself. I can remember there was one young girl came for an interview. She's absolutely stunning. She was gorgeously dressed. And the client said, well, if you get a job here, you're going to have to come up with the top. And when you're serving out meals, you have to have your hair tied up. I don't want hair in my meals. So that's something obviously important to that client. Dementia care mapping. We did the dementia care mapping course at Bradford University, and we did try out dementia care mapping. Didn't really like it that much. We did David Sheard's course, and he does a sort of like a qualitative dementia mapping and an observation tool. That worked really, really well, and we actually took a lot of what he did with that. So what we do is totally copying from David. He does this exercise, I don't know if everyone can remember, with the toast. Yeah. And you sort of describe the toast and things like that. So we trained the staff in that. So we train the staff, And then exactly what David said, you know, is they then go out and do a 2-hour observation, sitting in the lounge to see what it's like as a client. And then well, we don't actually get them to give feedback to the colleagues because they might have a bit of a fallout. So, but then, you know, I sort of generate the feedback from what they've told us, and we sort of evidence that as well as part of the audit. That is the best training anyone can have. You know, forget about going on training courses and things like that. If they can see the lived experience of a person with dementia in the care home, sitting bored in a chair, people not engaging, people not interacting, people not even being bothered to say hello, they soon, you know, cotton on to things. So that was a good one. Doll therapy. Yes. What do people think about doll therapy?
Sounds good to me.
I've seen it on the internet.
Have you?
Yeah, I don't think it's that silly.
Yeah.
Perhaps I shouldn't say that.
Yeah. I was totally against doll therapy. You know, David Sheard was all doll therapy this, doll therapy that. I thought, oh no. You know, I'm just not into it. I don't like the idea at all. The usual things, you know, it's childlike and all the rest of it. So we had a meeting with the residents and their families and said, you know, what would you think if we just brought some dolls in? Oh yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Yes, definitely. If people want to pick up dolls, then fair enough. So, all right, okay, then I'll have to do it now. So what we did was we don't, there's no way we sort of push dolls. We just bought, Silver Cross pram? Silver Cross pram, and 2 or 3 dolls, and they've all got these beautiful knitted clothes, that type of thing. And we just sat them around. And at the time, we had a resident, and she was quite mid to late stages of dementia, and she would walk around. Not the lady that I was, you know, talking about originally. She'd walk around a lot, and she'd no sort of awareness of personal space at all. So she'd go up to somebody who was sitting down in a chair, maybe somebody who couldn't stand, and she'd be right over them. Not that she was being confrontational or anything like that. There was nothing like that. But it obviously caused animosity because, go away, get away, why are you here, go away, like this. And she'd go from one person to the next. And interestingly, she picked up one of the dolls. And what a difference it made, not just to her, but to everybody else in the care home. It just changed everybody else's lives because they were constantly, go away, you know. And what we found that was happening was the people that a week earlier had said, go away, were saying, oh, bring her here, let's have a look, see what she's wearing today. And they were actually summoning her over. And we ended up with family members knitting clothes. It started off a knitting club. And even though, you know, we had no residents, and we still don't have residents that can knit nice baby jumpers and things like that, what they do is they knit squares for pram covers, that type of thing. And then when we get loads of pram covers, we donate them to the animal refuge. So we have a trip to the animal refuge and they donate those. So doll therapy, we've only had probably in about 6 years 2 people that have picked up the dolls. But also we found, which isn't really in any of the case studies that you read about doll therapy, is we have a lot of grandchildren visit and they're picking up the dolls, and it's kind of all, it's creating this sort of playful activity between, you know, maybe the grandma or the great grandma and the grandchildren. So, you know, it's nice to see. Yeah, so we started off with a culture seed, and that seed grew into a tree. The difficulty is maintaining those leaves on that tree, because you just think, I've got there, and you haven't. Butterfly. This is, I'm not actually sure if this is David Sheard's work or whether it's somebody from America.
Well, David Sheard uses it.
He uses it, yeah. And so this is, I've got to say, the be-all and end-all, really, of supporting people. And I keep on referring to people with you know, dementia, because we tend to more times get people with dementia. Again, really applicable to home care. You know, that we do have time. We have time to do butterfly things with people in home care. The idea of the butterfly is you do 30-second activities. So I would be the butterfly for the day, and I'm there to set the scene in the care home. So if I know that Joe Bloggs likes his quiz books, he'll have his quiz books out. They'll have the memory boxes out with all different things. And we just kind of set the scene. And the problem when you're managing a care home and you've maybe got, I don't know, 28 residents and you've only got 5 or 6 staff, you can't give a one-to-one to everybody. And, you know, the best will in the world, we're all restricted by funding cuts. So the idea of the 30-second activity is that the butterfly fleets around everybody, kind of engaging them, trying to get them to interact together, and then keeps on moving around so that nobody gets missed. And these 30-second activities, they don't cost anything. And it's things such like just making eye contact, having a smile, patting a dog, giving a hug, talking about nice clothes, the scarf, you know, what do you think of this? What do you think of the fabric? How does it feel? That type of thing. Asking for help with chores. So it could just be, oh, you wouldn't mind, would you? I'm so busy, would you help us by polishing the table? That type of thing. Evoking memories from life story work. And this is where, you know, when you get to know people really well, you learn about them and the families and what's important to them. Sharing of hand lotions, smelling, talking about it. How do your hands feel? Are they nice and soft? We have a sock box, so we pair the socks up. Reading crosswords, just having a laugh. You know, you don't want people working in care homes that are going to be miserable. You need somebody that's going to really uplift the spirit and the atmosphere in care homes. I mean, this list, this is just a few that I could fit on this PowerPoint, but it goes on and on and on. But if you can sort of visualise this butterfly just trying to get everybody involved and just fleeting. So what they shouldn't be doing is just sitting with one client and doing a one-to-one. They're there for everyone. And it's hard work. It's not easy. And, you know, the staff have to have the training to be able to do this. But if you look at that, there's an awful lot there that you can do in home care. And to be absolutely honest, there'll be an awful lot there that the home care staff are doing, but they don't get the credit for doing it. They're working at a high level, but they don't appreciate the high level that they're working to. And I think often we, you know, when we're doing home care, you know, the managers are sitting in the office and they don't know that these care workers are doing all these good things. Yeah, we tend to, what works well for us may not work well for other people, but we have a 3-pronged approach to our activities. So for us it has to be structured, because if it's not structured it doesn't happen. You know, I learnt that when I went to Cardiff for 4 days. I was absolutely distressed when I got back. So we have the butterfly, and then we have life skills as well. So life skills, this is something really that we kind of developed ourselves, but it's not innovative. It's out there. You know, the people are doing it. Things such as preparing the veg, helping getting people to prepare the veg. You know, if you can we get the residents to pull the serviettes up and things like that. And I mean, I was on the phone to the night staff last night, and you know, we've got a few poorly people, and you know, one of the things that hasn't been getting done is the serviettes. And the night staff said, "Do you know something, Catherine? Can you get on people doing the serviettes?" She said, because it was awful having to sit and fold. So you know, it not only just keeps people active and helps them, it's also helping us so that we can spend more time with the residents as well. Polishing cutlery, the buttering the bread. I don't like to have petting the dog after buttering the bread and things. It's not very good, is it? I should have moved that. Gardening, memory boxes, hoovering. So we have Eubanks scattered around. So that people can do setting the tables, washing the dishes, ironing, polishing fur, that type of thing. So we have people that's responsible for setting people up and supporting people to do life skills in the care home. And again, you know, home care, very applicable. You know, we are there to encourage independence, and like we say, we have some really good care workers out there who do that. But we also have structured activities so that we can do sort of group things. So we do singing for the brain, sort of-ish, really. We do singing, we do songs. We do armchair aerobics at about 11 o'clock every morning. We do reminiscence, we have meetings, outings, we do lots of arts and crafts. We have a knitting club that's set up because of the doll therapy. We do baking, we do sort of themed afternoons. We do there's loads and loads of things that, like I say, it's not just us that does it, but a huge amount of care homes do it. But the problem is like maintaining the momentum. That's the difficulty with it. So that's just showing the leaves have all gone off the tree, and it happens, and you can't beat yourself up too much about it. The culture changes that we've made has taken 13 years, and you know, as the manager, I have to come in and do unannounced inspections, and you're guaranteed you can come and do your unannounced inspection and there's no activities being done. And it's about sort of training, educating, supporting, because training is not enough. You can go and spend a huge amount of money on people training, but if you don't have the culture there to start with, nothing's going to work. So it is a hard battle. Hot topics. One of the things that we did do was when I found that when you put people on training to do with supporting people with dementia, occasionally they forget the most basic principles, and they don't mean to. So for instance, I had a girl who was doing an activity in the care home probably about 3 months ago, and she was doing this activity with people with later stages of dementia, and you don't want to knock her because she was doing something and she thought, you know, the best will in the world, she thought she was doing really well. But what she did was she set up a whiteboard and did a quiz on the whiteboard, and there was the people that she was doing the quiz with, a lot of them couldn't even speak because they couldn't articulate the words. It was totally inappropriate. So it wasn't that I didn't want to knock her, but at the same time I had to say in a nice way to her, you know, that's good what you're doing, but not for people with these later stages of dementia. So it really sort of hit me that what they were learning in the classroom, because they'd all learnt about it, wasn't being applied in practice. So we came up with, obviously, lots of different strategies, but one of the things we came up with was what we call hot topics. So what we did was, the Skills for Care have a common core principles of supporting people with dementia. So we took those principles, so it's not our own ideas really, but we adapted it because a lot of those common core principles are management things. So we took out all the management stuff and just put the basic, well, I'm saying it's basic, isn't basic, it's a high level of support. So it's not that it's basic, I shouldn't say that. And we've developed 4, and if you know the common core principles, you'll recognise these. So things like knowing the early signs of dementia, promote independence and encourage activity, communicate sensitively to support meaningful interactions, and recognise the signs of distress and respond by diffusing a person's anxiety and supporting their understanding of events they experience. That's a mouthful. I might have to change that one. So all it is if you can imagine an A4 side, A4, and on the front is 3 columns. They're not very big, not a huge, you know, somebody can do this in 10 minutes. That's 10, 15 minutes. That's all it'll take a member of staff to do. And it's just remembering things such as, you learn things on your courses, but you keep on forgetting to apply them. So say for somebody with dementia, if at the mid to late stages that we support, if you say to somebody, okay, what do you want to wear today? Do you want to wear a black dress, green dress? Do you want to wear your trousers? Or how about that nice pink jumper that your daughter bought you? It's too much information. It's too much information. They can't articulate that. You know, it's hard for them. But you know, if the staff get the 2 outfits and saying, which one do you prefer? Do you like this one, or would you like to wear that one? They can indicate which one they like to wear. But sometimes they forget about things like that. And also, with these hot topics, it reinforces to them, actually I do that, and you know, so I'm okay, I'm doing it well. So they have a little bit to read, and then on the back, they have questions. Just 2 or 3 questions. Like I say, you don't want to take any more than 10-15 minutes, and they answer the questions. And then of course that then comes as evidence towards to us that actually, yes, it's like a quality assurance process as well. So we've done that with 4. You can do it with a lot more. You know, dignity falls really well into hot topics, that type of thing. And like I say, it didn't take a lot to prepare, because you know, if you go on the Skills for Care website and the SCI website and things like that, there's loads of information, and you can just use it all yourself. There's no copyright. Top tips: build the right skill mix in staff teams. I don't know how other people are finding, but we're getting an older workforce. Has anyone else found that? People, as you know, people where they're retiring at, I don't know, was it 60 or whatever, is it 66 now? And they sometimes not necessarily struggle, but it is a lot harder for them, because it is a physical job, particularly in a residential care home. When we get people come from the home care and help out in the care home, you know, it's hard for them. It is a physical job, and particularly in our building, they're up and down stairs all the time. So we needed to look at a way that that supported the staff, because you know, there's no getting away from the fact that they've got the expertise, they've got the skills, they've got the knowledge, but supported them staff to maintain the job that they've got, but at the same time bringing the youth sort of so that it marries up well, and it's getting the right skill mix. Small changes make a big difference. So when you do take stock, when I was talking to Sandy last night, and she said, oh, but you've done this, you've done that, I thought, oh God, yeah, I suppose we have really. You don't realise yourself when you're a manager that you have made these small changes, but when you make the small changes, it keeps the leaves on the trees. You know, it just helps it to stay, you know, to stay green and healthy, and you know, looking at the well-being of people. So, you know, don't knock yourself back, because being a manager is an absolute thankless job, and sometimes you need to look back and look at the positives. Yeah, I can't stress that training is absolutely not enough. We've been in a very fortunate position, same as yourselves, that I've had an awful lot of funding through the Care Sector Alliance Cumbria, and every bid there is, I go for it. And I can't thank that, you know, the care sector enough. But in reality, unless you give a sort of a grounding, a way that people can perform to the standards they've been trained with, that they've got the culture of best practice, training isn't going to work. So this is where you role model in best practice, and we've all got excellent role models in practice. My only downside, if I was to say anything about my job, and I'll probably be hung, drawn and quartered for saying this, is there's a lot of paperwork. And I'm not saying that paperwork's not essential, because it absolutely is, but it just means that I'm not there to role model best practice, and I find that really hard to cope with, really. And you also find that I don't know the residents like I knew them 10 years ago. You know, I'm not necessarily be able to deliver person-centred care. Well, I couldn't, because I'm too far removed. So you have to have role models at the ground level that's working. So they're often the ones that have been there for a long time. The other problem we have, and I don't know whether everybody else has got the same issue, is people don't think they've had training unless they go on a training course. And, you know, this shadowing where people shadow or they're working alongside a very experienced person. They don't see that as training. And, you know, we've looked at ways that we can capture that as training and develop different strategies, which we're kind of on our way to. So, like everyone else, you know, we do the shadowing, we do the mentoring, we do the supervisions, and we do observations as well. Back to basics. Yeah, this is our favourite term in the care home. Right, everybody, back to basics. Because if standards aren't right, they need to go back to basics. And in the home care, this came out as a big problem in back to basics, because care workers didn't have the basic principles and skills to support people the way that they wanted to be supported. So if you look at the apprenticeship framework and you look at the diploma, and previously you look at the MVQ, it's all nice, but it doesn't teach them how to look after somebody. They have to demonstrate that they're competent. So, for instance, if a care worker worked somewhere where they didn't have to support with intimate personal care or something like that, and then they came to work in the care home, they don't know how to assist somebody with a wash, they don't know how to help somebody with a shave, they don't know how to clean dentures. The thought of cleaning dentures is just absolutely appalling. So what we found with home care is we were putting people through these diplomas and MVQs, but they didn't know how to bed bath somebody, they didn't know how to shower someone, they didn't know how to do somebody's teeth. Bed making, huge problem in home care. So what we did with the home care staff, like we do with the care home, right, back to basics, everybody in. And my brother Wilson actually did the last session and it worked really well. And those of you, has anybody done the nurse training? Yeah, right. And when you did your nurse training, you worked in, you had clinical skills. And we used to have to go and put a swimming costume on. And we used to have to bed bath each other. Well, I'm not as cruel as that, we don't get them to do that. But we had to get a swimming costume on, we had to learn how to bed bath each other, get to know what it felt like. And then we were on the wards making beds. And you used to go from ward to ward to ward. I mean, they wouldn't for infection control now, let you do it. But basically, the whole hospital was told, we've got a load of student nurses, don't make your beds. They're going round and making the beds. And that's kind of the back to basics we're talking about. So we got the the home care staff to come, and we teach them how to bed bath somebody. They've got the clothes on, but we've got the bowl and the cloths, and then we use have you come across the Department of Health Dignity Challenge cards? Yeah, and they're good because we got them to hoist each other bed bath, clean each other's teeth, brush each other's hair, that type of thing. Absolute back to basic stuff. And then we got each of the staff that were there to review the people who were sort of bed bathing and things. Have they maintained the person's dignity? Have they done this? Have they done that? Have they done the other? And, it didn't take a huge time. It was maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. But sometimes you have to do that to drive your standards back up, or, maintain your standards. In the care home, we often back to basics. And that could be back to basics. Come on now, let's get these activities back to basics. Where's your Butterfly technique? Where's this, that and the other? Care workers to do observations. Yeah, I've talked about that. That's when the care workers themselves do the observations, like David Shear's observations in practice. Seeking alternative sources of funding. I've got to put my hand up. I've got a problem. I've got an addiction to applying for funding. I think it's a bit like a gambling problem I've got without the gambling. But I apply for everything. And, for instance, I'm going to move on and talk about the apprenticeships very briefly. But for the apprenticeships, the Care Sector Alliance Cumbria have funding that you can claim for when people have completed it. Also, the National Apprenticeship Service, I'll give employers about £1,500 towards the wage costs of each apprentice. And also the Cumbria County Council also have something like £2,500 as well towards the wage costs. There's all sorts out there. And, when we're looking at recruitment and retention, the staff have got to feel as if they're progressing, that they're getting better, that they're gaining qualifications. It helps in the retention, it helps in the morale, and it helps us as well, because it's not just a tick in the box on a bit of paper with the inspectors or whatever, but you can actually see that the standards are improving. The only problem I've got is sometimes, and I shouldn't say it's a problem, it isn't a problem, it's what you want, but you'll come in and somebody will say to you, Catherine, can I see you a minute? And I'll say, yes. I've got a duty of care to tell you. And if I hear it once, I hear it, and they're just so much aware of the duty of the care, the safeguarding issues and things like that through the training, which leads on to don't accept bad apples. It's hard to say this sensitively, but not everybody's cut out to work in health and social care. And sometimes it doesn't matter how much training, supervision, mentoring, support, if you've got a bad apple, they don't want to be working in health and social care. And, it is about finding these bad apples quite quickly and them no longer working for you, because they'll drive down your standards. One of the problems with our activities, they were very much afternoon focused. So we kind of altered the shifts, and it was a couple of hours where there's loads going on, and then in the morning it's a bit of a dull, there's not a lot going on. So what we wanted was to look at starting apprentices, but not really to replace staff with apprentices, but for them to complement the workforce, so they're in addition to. And the idea of the apprentices was, the young apprentices, was that it would give them an opportunity in health and social care. And we do know that some strive to be social workers, some strive to be nurses. They're not all going to stay in, social care. Does it matter? You've given a young person an opportunity, and, also it's bringing a vibrance as well to supporting people. So before we started recruiting apprentices, I really wanted to make sure we met all the guidelines. So this is really what the Skills for Care say about apprentices. Just a step back. So they've got to be sort of registered on an approved training programme, and the advice of Skills for Care is that it's an apprenticeship programme. The manager or a designated person has to be able to assess the competence to carry out all tasks required of them, including interpersonal care. So we've developed like a competency assessment tool. So although they do the Skills for Care Common Induction within the first 12 weeks, in fact they do it quicker than that, it just isn't enough, not for us, because it doesn't teach them, it says about communicating well and about the duty of care, but it doesn't go into how to care for somebody. The appropriate support is offered to the young person, so they're on they've got mentors there to support them, and the shadowing programme. And again, which nobody would do. Nobody would leave a young apprentice in charge of a care setting, or if it's a home care company. These young people aren't going to be working on their own, doing home care. And also the Care Quality Commission supports the view that 16, 17-year-olds can make a valuable contribution to adult social care. But the difficulty is to make sure that these young learners aren't abused, that they are gaining a lot from the learning, because they're not paid a huge amount of money. I think it's something like, is it just under £2.70 an hour for a young apprentice? I mean, we don't pay that, we pay more than that. But also what we do is we give them pay rises according to how many units they've completed as an incentive to complete the diploma. What the funding tends to be, if not always now for apprenticeships, the government don't just fund MVQs or just diplomas as it is now. They have to do a full apprenticeship programme. And I wasn't looking forward to doing the apprenticeship programme. It's a lot of work and everything, but actually it's really, really good. And they have to do these areas. It's worth saying that when we talk about apprentices, you can have somebody who's 60-year-old that's worked in the care home for 20 years. If they're registered to do the diploma on this apprenticeship programme, we call them apprentices as well. So, it isn't just 16-year-olds that are apprentices. It could be 60, it could be 66-year-olds. So what we do is we do a certificate in preparing to work in adult social care, Now this is related to your Skills for Care Common Induction. It's the same units, and that gives them the theory for their diploma. So being a bit kind, we don't like to do too many things. We use the induction programme to map into the certificate. So right from the start of working, they're already working towards the diploma, and we collate all the evidence for them. They then do maths and English. So if they've got a C grade or above in maths and English within the last 5 years, they don't have to do that. But we do put them through the functional skills as well. And that really isn't a bad thing, because, we're not having to do more and more documentation. We should have very good documentation in place, and you do need people in the workforce that can articulate and can really word structured reports that really hits the nail on the head of everything that they've done to support for that person. So that's more and more important. Employment rights and responsibilities, well, that's just an essay that they do about contracts, what's in your contract, what's your salary, that type of thing. That takes them about an hour and a half to do. Then they do the diploma. So there's mandatory units in the diploma, which is basically your Skills for Care Common Induction. So they do that, and then they do optional units. So that might be something like assisting a person with the hygiene or whatever. But we actually choose the optional units that the learner does, because it's important for us to maintain the skills in certain areas. So for us, everybody does the medications as an optional unit. They do that. Everybody does the dementia pathway. So that's because we support mainly people with dementia. So you can do sort of a kind of a home care pathway, you can do a generic pathway, you can do a learning disability, or you can do a dementia pathway. And then the next part is personal learning and thinking skills, and that is mapped across by Skills for Care, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But that's just about developing a reflective practitioner that's going to think about what they're doing, look at other people's practice and say, yep, she's a good role model, that's the way I'm going to go. And it's helping them to develop them skills as a reflective learning practitioner. Yeah, we developed, for the apprentices starting, an on-the-job learning programme. And what we did, we took the diploma, the level 2 diploma, and used that with the induction standards and everything, and added our own meat. So, one of the things with the diploma it talks about is the agreed ways of working, and one organisation's agreed ways of working is going to be totally different to the Laurel's agreed ways of working. Having experience of home care and care home, you can't really, mix and match too much. This is just the first page of the on-the-job learning programme that the learners do. And you'll see, if you're familiar with the diploma, a lot of it is diploma related. So this one is preparing a person to support for eating and drinking, and then the learners can, which is very much the diploma learning outcomes, which is all your common induction standards. But your agreed ways of working, that's things that's really important to drive standards for your organisation, is your agreed ways of working. So for instance, we want a sociable environment. If we see a member of staff standing over somebody and feeding them, that's no good. So you need to be able to sit down and maintain dignity and things like that. So I'm pushing on for time, so I won't go into too much about that. We set up an e-learning resource centre for all of our staff. So each member of staff, not all of them at the moment, but the majority of them, have access to an e-learning portfolio. So what we do is we put anything of any importance, any new documents, anything that we want, we put into this e-learning. So that's just part of it with each of the different units. And then this is sort of the dignity resources that the staff have, and some of them are website links, some of them are documents, but what we try to do is keep it updated with all best practice principles. Bruno, this is the light note to finish on really. One of the things that we did do was we got a pat dog, and our pat dog is Bruno, and that's Bruno there. And what we did was, I had this idea, you know, do a lot of reading, do a lot of talking to people. We'd have a pat dog. People with dementia would love him and everything else. It didn't work because what happened is a little puppy, and you can see how tiny Bruno is. He, you know, somebody would pick him up and cuddle him, and then they'd walk off and just drop him. So it ended up, it wasn't the best idea. You know, when you read all the research and all the evidence about dogs in care homes, nobody tells you that. So I'm not an animal lover. I didn't particularly like dogs. So Bruno ended up having to come home with me in a night time because he couldn't be left unsupervised. So he goes to the care home every day with me. And we've only got one person that doesn't like dogs, and he knows not to go near her, but everybody absolutely loves him. And anybody that sees him falls in love with him, and that's how come he's Little Paws. He was the model for Little Paws, so he's in Houghton Hall and he's all over England.
Wow.
And he's even a little keyring. That's our Bruno. But if you get the next slide up, because a little word of warning. We've now got 7. One of them's had pups, and of course nobody wanted to get rid of them, so we've got 7 now, I think. And one of them's entered for Crufts in March. So we're leading up to Crufts after Christmas and having events and themes and everything else. But it's getting back really. It's about the little things that we are all doing that makes a difference. And it's really the message to get across is everybody's making culture changes. You know, whether you're doing home care, residential care, day centres or whatever, we're all a long way to getting best practice and exceeding in some areas as well. Okay, thank you.